We need to understand, what is this community-based learning? Are we going to be going ahead with the curriculum, with the syllabus as was intended initially in the year before COVID-19 struck? How many teachers should we have in a village so that the village can qualify to have community-based learning? Is it going to be in schools? The issue of physical distancing. There are some instances where we're talking about a certain area may have some private schools, but there's quite some substantial distance to the nearest public school. Are we talking about the public schools plus the private schools? Are the private schools involved in this? There are very many questions, right? And that's why we're discussing this today. The entire education debate, we're having it today. Let's first of all bring in the PS for Basic Education, Dr. Belio Kipsang. Good morning, Bona PS.
Good morning, Latif.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much.
I think let's start off from the very beginning, Bona PS. Explain to us what the community-based learning is all about and what the intentions are.
Thank you very much, Latif. I think what I'll say about this, from the name itself, community, is that we are taking learning back to the community so that we can engage our children in the environment in which they are in. So we are not taking these children anywhere else. If you are living in a gated community, then we take those children in that particular area. For those of us who come from the rural area, then what we are mapping out is that particular rural area. We check how many children are around here. Is there a teacher in that place? Once there is a teacher that lives within that particular community, then this is the teacher that will engage these particular children. So what is very important, and what I can say about this particular program, is that we would want to have our children positively engaged. We would want our children and our learners to be productive. We would want them to be useful with themselves in this particular time of COVID-19. Because as we have all seen in the last few months that we have had this problem, we've been running e-learning and remote learning. But still, as we try to do this, we realize that there is still so many children in communities that may not be able to be reached because of issues of connectivity, issues of not maybe having the devices, which devices include radio, TV, smartphones. So to be able to have and give these children an equal opportunity in engaging them, then we, with engagement and a lot of consultation with our stakeholders, we realize that already we are having our teachers paid. We are having our teachers already taken care of in terms of being employees of Teacher Service Commission. Then we said, and with engagement, including with teachers themselves, because we had the EDS Association, we had the National Union of Teachers, we have CUPET, we had the Kenya Association for Special Schools. So with all these people, with private schools, we all say that it is good to have our children engaged so that at any one time, we are giving them busy and we are giving them positively engaged during this time of COVID. Thank you.
I'm looking at how this is going to roll out across the country. And first, before we go to details, in terms of timelines, is this community-based learning something to keep children busy or learners busy just during the COVID period? Or is it something that will then be embedded in overall education moving forward?
I think as at this particular time, because we are in a situation that none of us prepared for, we have been found in this situation of COVID-19, then we have to be innovative to make sure that our children, one, are engaged, two, continue to learn. And learning is not only about what we teach in our curriculum. Learning is wider than just what we learn and what we have in our curriculum. There are life skills, there are situations that we would want to teach our children. For those of us who are brought up in the rural areas, during those days, you would be able to know how to milk, you would be able to know how to till, you would be able to be given the folk stories back at home. this in itself was learning, and it is still learning. And therefore, we are trying to bring back that particular culture at this particular time when we are faced by this particular pandemic, and that we must be able to make sure that our children are productive, that our children are kept busy. We've seen situations and life-threatening situations, including teenage pregnancies and all this. But now that we have our students and our children being able to engage with our teachers, and our teachers are meant and are trained to mold the young ones. Personally, as a teacher, I know we were given an opportunity to co-create our children. And that is what we would want to do in this particular time, but in a different environment. The environment that we have been doing it is in a school environment. The environment that we are doing it now is in a community environment. When we are in a community environment, we shall be able to learn more than what we would learn in a school environment. This is a situation that we are handling, a situation that we are faced with now. Once this situation is managed, the pandemic situation, and the Ministry of Health has been able to advise us that schools are now able to open, and which we have advised everybody else that by January, and that's what our medical experts have told us, that by January we shall have been able to manage the disease. Our doctors will have been able to learn it more. Our bodies will have been able to accommodate it better. And therefore, by January, we should be able now to have our children in our school environment. And that's when we go back to our normal way of teaching, our normal way of learning, our normal way of focusing now in our curriculum. But this community learning is part of also preparing ourselves towards that particular end, because it is a multi-agency approach of learning. We have Ministry of Health, we have Teacher Service Commission, we have Ministry of Interior National Coordination, and Ministry of Health will be able to assist our teachers to prepare these particular children on protocols that we shall be able to observe when the school environment opens. Okay. So once again, this is a learning environment that is able to address the situation in which we are in now. When we go back to school in January, then we shall be able to adjust and adopt ourselves to that particular environment of learning, where we prepare our children for the whole situation of school learning that will lead all the way to the time that we shall be able to present them for an examination and all that. But for now, we are skilling them about life. That's what we are doing now in community learning.
What the ministry has done, sir, is actually very commendable. But what I would like you to clarify for us is, yes, community learning, what will be the content of the curriculum? Because there has to be a curriculum that is going to be taught. What is it?
Thank you very much. Some of the suggested broad areas of learning that I can say includes teaching our children about value formation, about social responsibility, about generally about entrepreneurship, having our religious leaders to be able to assist our children in their religious background. We are having our socio-cultural environment. These are the activities that we are looking at. We are looking at the issues of environment. We are looking at the areas of creativity and arts. We are looking at the areas of language. We are looking at the areas of numeracy. When I say numeracy, it is wider than what we would call mathematics. We are just taking our children to appreciate what it is in all these areas. So once again, we are looking at citizenship, we are looking at environment, we are looking at creative arts, we are looking at languages, and we are looking at numeracy, we are looking at games and fitness, life skills, we are looking at the general issues of home science. How would a kid be able to be assisted to be able to know a few things that we were able to know at our early ages ourselves? The whole issues of assisting and making them appreciate what happens in a kitchen, what happens in a garden. So these are not traditional learning areas. These are areas that we are trying to make our children appreciate the totality of life.
Is this going to be broken down into a timetable? For example, every day, this is what is going to happen between this time and the other time, and taking into consideration the various age groups?
Thank you very much. It is good that you are bringing the question of age groups. So we are going to group these particular children to be able to be in an environment that they can appreciate what they are learning. As a result of one is the age in which they are in, their level of learning. So you are seeing at mostly children between grades 1 and grades 4 being able to be taken, grade 1 to grade 3 being able to be taken in a particular area and being able to be socialized into what they can appreciate. There will be children in grade 4 to grade 8 whose ways of appreciating learning will have been different. There will be learners in our secondary schools whose ways of doing things will be different. So we shall be able to appreciate all these particular levels of learning and the different age sets that are there. So yes, we appreciate this. We take them through learning of almost 4 hours in a day because you would not want also to expose these children over a longer time. You would want to be able to give them an opportunity to play, an opportunity to be able to do the motor issues, using their hands, using their legs, using their body. So it will be a wider way of appreciating learning.
And how do you observe social distancing and the other measures for COVID-19 in this? I mean, if the children are still going to play, it means that they play with one another.
Now, one thing that we are going to, what I would say is that when we talk about games, it is not really about children being able to crowd in a particular area. You know, they can be taken about how to be able to engage in a particular sport, but not necessarily engaging in the sport itself. What is the sport all about? So that when this situation is eased out, then they'll be able to do certain things. Yesterday, our cabinet secretary for sports culture was able to give protocols in which we shall be able to observe. And you know, when I started this particular discussion, I say it is a multi-agency approach in delivering it. We have the Ministry of Health, so that the Ministry of Health is able to socialize our teachers in able to deal with all the protocols and procedures that must be kept when we are having these particular children. And once these protocols have been given to our teachers and our teachers taken through them by our colleagues in the Ministry of Health, then they will be better prepared to be able to deal with these particular children in this particular circumstance. What is very critical in this particular aspect is that we would want to engage our children so that they are productive within this particular time of COVID. Because if we leave our children, they will still be able to interact and do that which may harm them. So it is better for them to interact in a way that is now structured. And we are now trying to structure this particular environment through community-based learning. And it is a program that is being handled by various groups of individuals who have knowledge in various aspects that deals with humans at this particular time of COVID. And that's why I'm saying it's a multi-agency. And Ministry of Health is very useful at this particular time because they will continue to guide our teachers on critical aspects that they need to observe as they engage our children in this time of COVID-19.
I'm curious to know details of how exactly this will be rolled out, Dr. Kipsang. In this case, how then, if we're looking across the country, county by county, school per school, how will the messaging be sent out? Bring your children. Will there be a rota? Will there be a schedule? How will they hear about this? And how then will it be rolled out? How do you know where you're supposed to go? Or is it based on the school that you used to attend? I mean, those details seem to be a bit fuzzy.
Now, what is there is that, and once again, I want to go back to what I said earlier. This is a multi-agency approach way of dealing with this particular program. And we have our colleagues in the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government. We have our colleagues in Teacher Service Commission. We have our colleagues in the Ministry of Health and ourselves at the Ministry of Education. So what we have done is that our colleagues at the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government, because of the wide structure that is there, running all the way from the regional commissioner, the county commissioner, the deputy county commissioner, all the way to our chiefs and assistant chiefs, we use this structure to be able to map our children using the Nyumba Kumi initiative. Then we map these particular children because these colleagues will be able to know the environment in which they are operating from. They are able to know who is in this particular environment, and therefore how many children are in this particular area. Let's say if you are in an urban environment, and you are living in an estate, you are living in a particular close, then and court, then we shall be saying in this court there are 30 houses. In this particular 30 houses, how many children do we have in this particular 30 houses? So our colleagues at the Ministry of Interior will map this out and be able to know, and we are able to register these particular children. The Teacher Service Commission, which they have already done registration, and they have done extremely a commendable job, because we have almost registered. By 2 days ago, we had registered more than 300,000 teachers. So this in itself shows the commitment our teachers have on this particular program. So the Teacher Service Commission will be able to map the teachers and be able to know who are the teachers in this particular environment. Our colleagues at the Ministry of Interior will have been able to map out the environment and know how many children are in that particular point, that particular area. We at the Ministry of Education will be mapping out the open areas that these particular children will be able to learn from. And since this is in a community, then it is that particular conducive environment within that particular community that we shall use for learning. It is not necessarily a school environment. It could be a social hall. It could be an open field. It could be a worship area. What we must be able to see is to ensure that this is an area that is open enough for us to maintain all the protocols that the Ministry of Health would want us to keep in terms of social distancing, the 1.5 meters between our children. So our job at the Ministry of Education will be to map out these particular areas, to be able to work with the Teacher Service Commission in ensuring that the program is properly monitored. Our head teachers who we have involved, the Kenya Secondary School Heads Association, the Kenya Primary Schools Heads Association, will be able to continuously monitor the program and prepare reports that will be able to come to the Ministry of Education and go to the Teacher Service Commission. Our colleagues at the Ministry of Interior will be able to generate reports that will be able to say the situational analysis of where these particular children are, and be able to communicate the same to our colleagues at the Ministry of Interior at the headquarters through the structures that are there. So we have established committees that run all the way from the county, all the way to the sub-county, and then they go to a zonal level. A zonal level is where we have a community of schools of no more than 20 schools, and therefore a community of homes within that particular area aligned to that particular administrative structure. And therefore, with these particular committees that we've constituted, then these committees will be able to work in an environment of a multi-agency and ensure that each one of them is able to deliver on areas that they are better placed to deliver on. And as I've said, our colleagues in Interior will be able to map out the environment, ensure that every child from that particular area is brought out to be able to be taught by a teacher who will have been mapped out by TSC to ensure that there is a teacher in that environment. We at the Ministry of Education will have been able to map out areas that we can use as learning areas.
Dr. Kipsang, let me just ask this question. Again, against the background of the commendable effort that the ministry has made, with regards to the health concerns where learning is to take place, what level of preparedness in details have been put in place to ensure, what are we planning to put in place to ensure that there is a guarantee of the health safety of our learners?
One is that we are taking our teachers through training by the Ministry of Health on the protocols that are critical for our learners to be able to be safe. We also ensure that in that particular environment there is adequate water so that our children will be able to wash their hands. They will be soap around the same area. And our colleagues at the Ministry of Health will have taken us through the critical aspects that we must be able to maintain. Most our learners will for sure be having face masks. And with all this, we shall make sure also And we are working with our social partners to ensure that disadvantaged children from areas that informal settlements and all these other areas are able to be facilitated through working with all these partners to ensure that they are safe. But the most important thing is that our colleagues at the Ministry of Health will ensure that we maintain the necessary protocols that ensures, one, our learners are safe, and our teachers who are handling these particular learners are equally safe. We have already prepared guidelines as both TSC, Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Health. And these guidelines have been already shared out so that our teachers, the learners, communities are aware of what needs to be done and what protection that we must be able to provide to our children, our teachers, so that they are safe.
This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room this and every morning is Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, and C.T. Muga. Joining us on the line is Dr. Belio Kipsang. He's a Principal Secretary for Basic Education. Today is Education Tuesday. We are dedicating the show to looking at the various aspects of addressing education during COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Kipsang has just is telling us about the program that the government is rolling out. This is community-based learning. And you've already told us, PS, that the TSC has embarked on a program of mapping the teachers, and over 300,000 teachers are already registered, and you know where they are. What I'm concerned about is the timelines, because it sounds like you're doing this sequentially. Why not just do everything at the same time? Because the next thing that you're going to do now is ask pupils to register what grade they are in and where they are. So you already don't, you know where the teachers are. You don't know which pupils are in the areas that those teachers are.
Or do you know them?
You also do not know. I'm sure you don't have this information yet, because you said you're going to do that. Or have you done that yet?
Thank you very much, Latif. One thing I would want to say is that I said we are dealing with this as a multi-agency, in a multi-agency approach, and that TSC, which is the employer of teachers, has the responsibility of mapping out the teachers. The Ministry of Education, we have the responsibility of both working with our colleagues at the Ministry of Interior to map out the children and ensure that there is an environment that they are going to learn in. And I can assure you that the Ministry of Interior, mainly through the structure, the National Government Administrative Officer structure, which runs all the way to the assistant chiefs and the chiefs, together with the Nyumba Kumi initiative processes, is that each one of them and this particular structure has been able and has identified children in every other environment and be able to map these children to a teacher, map these children to a learning environment. So this is running concurrently. It is not that we are registering teachers. We have to start obviously by registering teachers so that we can appreciate that in this particular community there is a teacher, and therefore can be able to handle these particular children. So the starting point was to appreciate and know that there is a teacher, because we know and we have structures that can easily map out children. And as I've said, using the National Government Administrative Officers, we can easily be able to identify these children through the Nyumba Kumi initiative.
When do we expect
which
this?
We have done.
When do we expect this to start and conclude? The mapping out of children, especially looking at the age groups, because as you're saying, you're grouping them grade 1 to 3, 4 to 8, Form 1 to Form 2, Form 3s and Form 4s.
This has been done. And in some areas, essentially, we gave ourselves up to 2nd of September to be able to adequately and properly run the program. But in quite a number of places, and our officers have been out there checking how this is taking off, in quite a number of places, this is already running. And the mapping of these children has already been done. And I can tell you that our parents and our children have been waiting for this particular opportunity to be able to be engaged. And they are there for part of this particular process. And they are part of it in a way that they are also interested, because this is a symbiotic relationship where the student is seeing the essence of learning and the importance of this particular community learning. The parents are also seeing that the children are being engaged. Mainly those parents who are working, at least they will be knowing that their children are safe. And our officers out there, we've engage ourselves, and as government officers, our principal role is to ensure that we serve the citizens of this country. And therefore, we all came out to ensure that we map out the teachers, we map out the children, we map out the learning areas. So this has been done. I can give that, and I can assure you this, Latif.
So when this rolls out, how then will it be mandatory for all students who are in the school system? Because there are some schools that are offering the CBC learning that are currently offering classes to their students. How will this work with now this community-based learning?
Thank you very much. When I talked about mapping is just wider than just identifying children to be on community learning, community-based learning. When we are also doing mapping, we shall be mapping out those particular children who are engaged on online learning and remote learning. So since we are going towards blended learning, so we are blending it in a way that there will be those who will be on community learning. There will be those like I want to most sincerely appreciate our colleagues at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development who have been running an online system. We have also quite a number of our own private schools who have done very well in preparing online learning. So in the process of mapping, if we map the child to a house and that particular child is already engaged on online learning, then as part of our mapping, we shall have identified that child and we shall be knowing what that child is doing. And therefore, we shall be able to leave that particular child to continue with that aspect of online learning. But if the child at any one time within the learning and within the day would want to join their colleagues in community learning, then that kid will be accommodated just like any other child.
Okay.
So we are not going to say today it is a switch off, switch on affair, that, we are leaving online learning and going into community learning. No. These are all opportunities of engaging our children and making sure that our children are productively engaged.
And does this contribute?
One another.
Sure. Does this contribute in any way, shape, or form towards the syllabus, or is it strictly to be engaged during this time?
Once again, I say learning is bigger than just preparing our children for examination. Because when we talk about curriculum and thinking that we must be able to take our children through the conventional curriculum, then what we are focusing ourselves is about assessment and the examinations. But at this particular time, we would want to engage our children in a wider aspect of learning than just preparing them for an examination. And that's why when I started, I said there will be life skills. There will be a whole question of values and principles, citizenship. These are some of the areas which are not necessarily examined.
Sure.
But they are very important for our children to appreciate these particular areas. So we are not preparing our children on the conventional curriculum. It is wider than the conventional curriculum.
Is there material that has been shared with the teachers on how they're going to roll out this program? Or are they expected to decide how they want to conduct the learning? So, for instance, if today we are doing social and cultural studies, is it dependent on the teacher to know how best to do this?
We have circulated the guidelines, and in the guidelines, it is able to give some degree of guidance to how teachers will be able to handle every area that they'll be handling. But our teachers, and myself being a teacher, is that in our training, we are made to be innovative in the way that we can be able to engage and socialize with our learners. And each environment will be different, because when you are dealing with life skills, each environment will be different. The way you will engage our children on life skills in an urban area may not necessarily be the same way that you will engage our children in a rural setting. So we give our teachers also the latitude to be able to be innovative in the way that they discharge this particular engagement with children. But what I can say is that together with the Ministry of Education, together with Teacher Service Commission, we've been able to develop guidelines that will be able to support our teachers. We are running from this week, we shall be running online socialization of our teachers on how to handle this particular community learning. So it is something that we are all learning. You know, none of us was prepared for COVID, but we have been able to adopt in dealing with COVID. And it is the same thing that we are doing in the education sector to ensure that every other day we are able to make sure that our children are kept safe and that they are properly engaged so that they are productive and that we are able to save them from the vacancies that are there within society. One thing that we've been able to see is that if we are not able to engage our children, they are more exposed to either gender violence or they are exposed to other aspects, including drug and substance abuse. So the best way of ensuring this does not happen is ensuring that we engage them in a way that is productive and useful to these young.
You know, on paper, it sounds very good, actually. As you explain it, it sounds very good and doable. But like everything else that we see with the government, when it comes to implementation, then we usually see some, missing gaps. I want to ask a specific question. So say, for instance, this particular village, you've mapped teachers and say you've seen that you have 2 teachers in a particular village, but then you have over 20 students of different age groups in this same village. How will you ensure that these teachers can serve these same students? We have children who would fall in the age group of 2 to 3, 4 to 8, Form 1 and Form 2, Form 3 and Form 4.
Now, one thing that I would want to correct is that, you said some programs, when they are put in paper by government, it sounds good and sometimes. But I can tell you, these are things that we properly engage ourselves. And together with our stakeholders, we went through the motions and how this can be done. And in areas that we may have one teacher, and we have more than 20 children, we shall be able to break these particular children into groups, and a teacher will be able to go around being able to give them activities that they can do and that they can deal with as themselves. Because there will be group learning, but maintaining the social distancing. The teacher will be able to give some of these learners what they can take home and be able to work with their parents when they go back home. So it is something that we all have to adopt. You know, Latif, even ourselves in our work environment, we have to learn and adopt to this particular COVID environment.
That's true.
I'm very sure even in your own working environment, you have had to adopt to this particular COVID environment.
Yes.
And it is something that we continuously keep learning. And we continuously improve. Even this community learning, we shall continuously learn from it. We shall continuously improve it so that we can perfect it to make sure that our children benefit from the process, that the community within which we are living benefit from this particular engagement, because we are doing this for the benefit of the child.
Okay.
And we shall try every other time to make it better.
How long is this process, or rather, how long will this engagement last? If you talked about September 2nd for you to get, back the first kind of information that you were looking for as regards to registration and such. So now, in terms of actual engagement of this community-based learning, between what periods are we looking at?
The learning is already on. I can tell you, in some environments, it was quite quick because you are dealing with a smaller environment. On the bigger scale environments, we are continuously doing this so that by the second this has been implemented across the country, we shall be certain that everybody is in the program. We are going to run this program as long as the COVID challenge is putting our children out of school, because it is important to engage our children. But we are hoping, and our colleagues at the Ministry of Health have given us indications. We all listened yesterday in our news that within the next 3 weeks, we shall be knowing whether the decline that we are now seeing is whether we are now starting to realize the flattening of the curve. Because once we have this flattening of the curve, then we can be able to assure ourselves that our children will be in school sooner than we thought, and that the environment will go back to normal, and that we shall be able now to prepare our children in the way that they expect and the way that we all expect to prepare our children. Because this is an investment, and when we are investing in the future, we invest in our children. And once the investment becomes regular in a way that we have always done it, and we are sure that this would happen by January, the way that our colleagues in the Ministry of Health is advising us, then the community learning will be able to run within that particular time that our children are excluded from their school because of COVID.
What has the ministry done to ensure that students who come from areas that were, say, ravaged by floods and for whom normalcy has not returned, and looking into the future, what if between now and the beginning of the new year we still have more rains? What has the ministry put in place to cater for such students?
Thank you very much, Latif. And I would want to say that, yes, nature also came in, and there were, even as of now, there are still rains. We have problems in regions like Lake Naivasha, Lake Baringo, Lake Bogoria, where the lakes have risen and they've swallowed, and the flooding has taken some of our schools. And we are already engaging with the community. I will be in Baringo on Thursday to go through an assessment. We've gone already to Marakwet, where our school was swept away. We know one of our school, the Girls, was totally swept away. The community and the leadership of that particular area have identified a new site where the school will be constructed. We have already provided resources. We are working through an interagency approach again, a multi-agency approach again. We are going to work with the Ministry of Public Service so that we can take advantage of the human capital that is already there through the National Youth Service to be able to reconstruct this school which was totally swept away. We have already started mapping of schools in Baringo. 7 of the schools are already under the lake. And on Thursday, we shall be sitting down with the leadership of Baringo, with our colleagues at the Ministry of Interior, so that we can be able to relocate these particular schools to safe areas. And we have almost 5 months. And we are sure that with the multi-agency team that we are working with, that we shall be able to deliver these schools before the schools open in January. Our colleagues at the Ministry of Public Works are already working very closely with us to make sure that we deliver on these particular schools and take them to safe areas, that our children will be able to go back to school like all other children across the country in these particular areas that have been affected by flooding.
And speaking about the safe learning environment, even before COVID struck, the ministry had gone around the country conducting an audit on the safety of schools, and you had closed some schools and said that these schools needed to up their game and bring their structures to facilities to a level that can accommodate teaching of students. Has that happened?
Now, when we went through this in January and the end of the year last year, we wanted to make sure that our children learn, and not only learn, but learn in safe environments. And therefore, we have to make sure that these environments and every other area, we have standards within which schools must live within. And that when we are registering these schools, and quite a number of some of these schools which were having issues, and some of them and most of them were found in informal settlements, you would find that most of them were not registered. So we wanted to take them through the processes of ensuring that they are registered, but while they are registering, that they meet the minimum standards of being a school. Most of these schools that never met the standards, we were able to map out the children and take them to the nearest public school which was meeting standards. And therefore, we can say with certainty that all the children who are in some of these particular schools were taken to schools that are mainly public schools, and they are learning as we talk, though they are home because of the COVID situation. Yes, our schools will require a lot of investment, both public and private, so that we can be able to take back our children in January. There will be questions of social distancing. And I can say as government, we are investing almost 6.5 billion shillings to expand the infrastructure in our schools, to improve the infrastructure in our schools. As for this week, we have disbursed for our secondary schools more than 2.7 billion shillings to use for improvement of the learning environment. We have also released almost 200 million to our primary schools, also to improve the environment. Like today for our primary schools, we have disbursed more than 1.9 billion shillings, which will go to both improvement of the environment, paying our workers. And when I talk about workers, it includes our BOM teachers, it includes our security officers, it includes all the support staff that we have in our schools. For our secondary schools, we have dispersed more than 16 billion shillings to be able to assist both, as I have said, in improvement of the environment, paying our BOM teachers, and also ensuring that our national hospital insurance scheme that is meant to support our secondary school children also run. So as we are talking, we are also preparing ourselves into ensuring that we are ready to open schools when January comes.
I know we're coming to the end of this conversation, Dr. Kipsang, but at the same time, COVID obviously caught a lot of people, everybody, unawares. And in a lot of cases, there's downtime. And just from what you're saying, it's not that there's downtime at the ministry or downtime around the country when it comes to education. But is it not also a unique opportunity now to look at factors that can be addressed when it comes to making sure that even if something does happen in the future, that we will not be caught at a standstill again?
And thank you very much. I can assure you that one thing that we are doing as government and appreciating what we have gone through is that we are improving our system now on online learning and blended learning so that into the future we shall be prepared and better prepared to be able to switch off to a different mode of learning when need arises. We are investing at the necessary equipment and environment at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. We are working with the private sector. We are working with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. We are working with quite a number of partners to ensure that we are better and ready. For our universities, we have encouraged them that online learning is the way to go. And that even as we open our universities, as we open our technical training institutions, that we have to invest in alternative ways of delivering our curriculum so that our curriculum delivery will not only be the face-to-face way of doing it. We must be able to change with times. We must be able to invest so that even when our schools open, certain lessons will be delivered online, whether there is a problem or there is no problem, so that we can continuously be able to improve this alternative way of delivering our curriculum. We shall be retooling our teachers to be able to adapt to the environments that may arise into the future so that we are better prepared to deal with this situation. Because COVID has taught humanity that, yes, life can be brought to a standstill. We didn't know that one time we cannot be able to travel from one country to another, but this has happened. And also in our education sector, we've also learned that education can be disrupted in a major way. And therefore, going into the future, we have to look at all permutations that we have to take and to appreciate if this was to happen, how do we deal with it? We've been engaging with our international partners, mainly UNESCO, to be able to look at better ways of handling emergencies as we go into the future. We are working with UNICEF to ensure that we are better prepared to deal with emergencies in education.
Right.
And emergencies in education is quite wide, as we have always said and already indicated, including flooding, including war, including disease, and all this. And that is why when it comes to even education in areas of refugee, we have to deal with this and appreciate it as part of education in emergencies.
Dr. Kipsang, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. And we just want you to pass on a message to the other stakeholder that you have not engaged with that is now watching, and this is the parent and the student. What message would you have for them this morning?
Latif, I would want to assure you that we did engage. And before we rolled out this program, we had an engagement at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. And you know, the parents have an association, and they are what we call National Parents Association. And the leadership of the National Parents Association works with us to make sure that they are part of this process. In fact, they are the ones who are encouraging us to go towards that particular environment. But once again, I would want to encourage our parents that we must get a way of ensuring that our children are safe. And the only way we can make our children safe is to ensure that they are engaged. And to make sure that they are engaged, then we have to get a structured way of engaging them. And that structured way of engaging them is what we are now having as community-based learning. So I encourage all of us that let's support this. Let's work together to ensure that our children are safe and that our future is safe, because the future is the children. And we can only have that future if we ensure that our children, in these very difficult times of COVID, are safe, mostly the culture. Because if we don't do it, we shall lose our culture. Thank you.
Asante sana.
Thank
Dr.
you very
Belio
much.
Kipsang is a Principal Secretary in the State Department of Basic Education. Asante sana for joining us, and we'll hope to have another conversation with you soon, especially after September when this formally rolls out, to just hear what is happening on the ground.
Thank you very much. Latif, I know today we were to engage ourselves mainly of COVID, but we are still engaging ourselves on COVID as it affects education. Thank you very much.
Asante sana.